What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Matt Smith of the almighty Theocracy. It is great to have you here, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Alex, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, man, it's awesome to have you here because your new album, Mosaic, is absolutely kick ass, and it is, I gotta tell you, though, it was worth the wait between Ghost Ship and now. Just even though it was such a long time, every song on this album was worth the wait. Being that it was such a long time between Ghost Ship and now, was Mosaic meant to be kind of like a new beginning in a way for Theocracy or a clean slate, or does it just feel like you were picking up where you left off?
That's a good question. I guess I would have to say a little bit of both because it feels like a clean slate and a new beginning in a way because of a couple different reasons. We have a new guitar player, so we have a new member in Taylor Washington, which is kind of giving us all a kick in the pants, and then we also have a new record label, Atomic Fire, and so in those ways, it kind of does feel like a new beginning, which is cool. It wasn't envisioned that way, but just kind of after the amount of time and the way things have worked out, it kind of feels that way a little bit.
Are you talking about Taylor Washington, who plays with Paladin and toured with Arsis?
Yep,
Yep,
yep, that's him.
I
Yeah.
interviewed him numerous times. Fantastic guitar player and great freaking guy.
Oh yeah,
So
he's awesome. See, I produced Paladin's record, and so I knew him from that, and so I knew what a great guitar player and what a great singer he is, and it's just so much fun, man, being able to kind of have that voice to harmonize with live. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable, really.
yeah, definitely, and huge shout out to Paladin. I think they're coming to town very soon, actually. So I'd
Yeah,
imagine,
they just hit the road, I think, yesterday.
yeah,
So
with Lutharo, who I just had on the
yeah.
show too. So it's fucking awesome. But I feel like Theocracy has a very different style from Paladin. Paladin having this sort of like power metal, even thrashy sort of vibe behind it, and he played with Arsis, which has like the melodic death metal and groove side behind it. And Theocracy, not to pigeonhole you guys by any means, I think you have a lot of different styles, but with your many different usages of your voice and your fluctuating heaviness and stuff, it's a very experimental band. So did Taylor maybe kind of bring in a little bit of the heavier side? Did he unleash your inner power metal?
No, I mean, he came in after everything was written and pretty much recorded, except for his guitar parts and the solos and stuff. So that hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure in the future, once we work together, I'm sure he'll bring his influences and his side of things in. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. The cat in the background, that's my favorite thing in the Zoom interviews. That was that
Oh
that's
no,
I love it.
we try to keep him out, but
No,
you know how it
nope,
goes.
nope. I want him photobombing the whole interview.
There you go. I'm sure it'll happen.
There's been times where, like, as the guy's talking, I'm not paying attention to a word he's saying, and I'm just like looking at the cat, like, lick its paws in the background and stuff.
Yep, yep. Been there, been there.
But when it comes to the making of any album, is it always begin with a vision or sort of like a preconceived idea, or is it like a very sort of like throwing paint at the wall and sort of seeing what sticks?
I would say more the latter. I mean, I rarely kind of plan anything ahead of time, and especially with this album and the way it kind of worked out, because I didn't know that there was going to be a fifth album. I hit such a burnout wall kind of after Ghost Ship, between doing those four albums straight and the tours and the all the studio work I did on the side and other work and travel and things like that. I just kind of needed a break, and so it was all sort of up in the air for a while, and then so I wrote a song, and then a couple other songs came and things like that, as these things tend to do. And so there was really no, I would say the only thing that was I guess preconceived was kind of at the end of the record, like the song Return to Dust, which was the first single, was I think the last thing I wrote, because after listening to everything, I kind of realized that we were missing that sort of big mid-tempo kind of anthem song. And so that one, in a way, was kind of written to order, just to fill out just to sort of make the whole listening experience, ebb and flow in a way that felt like it should. But aside from that, it just kind of comes as it comes, and then I have to kind of sit back and look at it later, and then I can kind of see, patterns or styles or the way things are similar to other albums or different from other albums.
Because I do consider Theocracy's music to be fairly experimental. I mean, I see elements of progressive metal, I see elements of like some metalcore in there, even, and I see some elements of real anthemic, almost symphonic stuff at times. Like, it's fair to say that trying new things does make it a little bit easier, right? It's not like you're a death metal band where it always has to consist of similar formulas.
Right, right. And that's a nice freedom to have, and you also kind of find as you do this for years and years, it's sort of like, even if you're kind of worried about something, or don't know how it fits in, it's kind of like, once we demo it and record it, it sounds like Theocracy because it's coming through our filter, you know what I mean? So really it just, you know, I always do what I love personally, which is big melodies and big riffs and drama in songs, and an arrangement that's interesting. And so within that, the palette is kind of endless. Oh, there's a cat again.
Well,
We can kind of yeah, we can kind of do whatever. So there's a nice freedom there.
and but then there's also lyrics that you have to incorporate in there as well. First and foremost, have you always needed to hear music before you came up with the lyrics, or could a lyrical concept or an idea maybe help determine the outcome of the music as well?
That's a good question. I've done it both ways. I mean, usually the music comes first for sure. There are songs. I remember thinking back to "Twisted Fate," the last song on our very first album. That one was written as a complete set of lyrics with no music, and I wrote the music afterwards. But usually the music comes first. But the thing that I learned from a lot of great songwriters that I looked up to, and have been fortunate enough to speak to, is the best way to do it is to have a title and to have a concept in mind, and then when you sit down to write, to sort of write towards that title and making that title pay off. That just makes, I've done it all kinds of different ways. I've done it with, just writing a complete piece of music, and not knowing where it's going, and kind of matching it to lyrics later. But usually, kind of, there's just sort of an instinctual thing that happens, that you can't really define, I guess. That just comes down to sort of being able to hear I mean, I'm always cataloging riffs and melodies and ideas, and being able to hear a melody or hear a riff, and think that just feels, for whatever reason, like this title or like this idea, and then you kind of marry them together, and write from there.
Is the master storyteller off the As the World Bleeds album, is that who you are? Are you the master storyteller who
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! That's God. I would never make that claim about myself. That's for sure.
but depending on what
Thank you.
the
That's very kind.
yeah, no worries. Because, like, I mean, just with that album alone, to have the master storyteller followed up by Nailed, but then you have a song like Drowned or Altar to the Unknown God, like, it seems like you're able to tap many subject matters, whether it will be very personal, very spiritually enlightening, very maybe like external, internal, you name it. Depending on what the lyrical subject matter can be about, does it maybe resonate with you in a different way, or feel like you channel a different energy or even a different side of yourself into that?
Mm. The thing that I always come back to is there always has to be some sort of, because like you said, there is a variety in what we do, in terms of, some songs are historical, some songs are very personal, and some are personal in the way that, maybe it's something that didn't happen to me, but maybe it's a friend of mine, or a story I heard. But there always has to be something that I can kind of latch onto, some emotion, or some struggle, or something in the lyric, or even if it's not, you know what I mean? You're going to come out in your writing one way or another. So um, even if it's not about me personally, I always find a thread in there where, if I care enough to write about it, then clearly it's on my mind and I care about it. So there's honesty and passion there, no matter kind of the framework of the song, I guess.
There definitely is honesty and passion, but in that sort of process, is there a lot of maybe like reflection or observation as well? Like, is there almost like a well that you go to sort of like collect different ideas?
Oh, sure. And a lot of times, a lot of times I don't even know until until kind of retrospect, like with this album, the even seeing, I mean, it, I've said it in a bunch of interviews now, but it sounds like such a kind of metal cliche, but death comes up so much on this album, and it wasn't anything planned or anything that I even really noticed. But between the last two albums, all my grandparents died, and my other family members, and this and that. So clearly, it was kind of on my mind, and I was thinking about death and legacy and all these things, and they just kind of work their way into the lyrics. Even, I mean, some songs are, like a song like "The Greatest Hope," the ballad on the album's very blatantly and obviously about that, and "Return to Dust" as well. But then you kind of see it pop up, here and there in other songs and things like that as well. So even if I don't plan on it or don't even realize it, there it always kind of this part of the process is always very interesting to me, because it's kind of the first, after being so close to a record for so long, it's kind of the first chance to sort of step back and see it as a whole, and kind of see concepts or things that I didn't plan on, that kind of pop up repeatedly.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that too, because when you, or not really funny, actually, I should use a different word, but like when that subject matter or that experience is the fuel behind the fire, does that maybe make the songwriting process just as deteriorating as it can be cathartic in a way?
I would say more cathartic. I mean, I always feel, I never feel worse after writing. I always feel better, and a lot of times it's, oh, I didn't know that I needed to write about this, or that I was going to write about this, but I guess this is kind of what came out that day. So clearly, I needed to on some level, but yeah, I wouldn't call it harrowing or deteriorating mentally. It can be encouraging. It can be a challenge for sure. It can be kind of eye opening, but I've kind of just learned not to second guess it, because I mean, it's all I can do. It's, I can only write the things that I am thinking about, or that I care about, or are important to me on that day. And if nobody else relates to it, or nobody else cares, then so be it. I can't worry about that.
Do you think
And
another?
fortunately,
Oh, but you were saying?
no, I was just gonna say, fortunately, so far, we've been blessed enough to where other people, I guess, go through the same struggles and have the same questions, and kind of identify with different iterations of what we talk about.
Do you think that another individual's interpretation of the material, even if it's their interpretation, is nothing like what you were trying to convey within its meaning? Do you think people's experience with an album adds new life to it, or adds another layer of context?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a cliche for a reason, that once you kind of put a piece of art out into the world, it doesn't belong to you anymore, and it's the audiences, and all that. And it can be annoying, when when if you see people make assumptions about something that are way wrong, or completely off base from what you had in mind. And I've had that happen before too. But it's, again, there's a lot of people out there, man, and they all come at it with their own filter. So I consider it an honor that people look at what we do, and pay enough attention to it, I guess, to sort of find something that means something specific to them, even if it's not what I had in mind.
I also got to mention this too, is that this year does mark 20 years of the debut of Theocracy, the self-titled debut. Fantastic debut, and you definitely hit the ground running within the Theocracy journey with that album. I kind of want to know like what the sort of thought process was going into that, because I do think that going between that to Mirror of Souls 5 years later is also a big evolutionary jump, and then to go to As the World Bleeds, Ghost Ship, and now it seems like there's always an evolution behind it. But what was the sort of mindset going into the making of the debut?
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. I was saying yesterday, in a way it seems like it, in a way it seems crazy to think that it's been 20 years, but yeah, it was just, one thing I'm really thankful for is that it took me long enough to get signed to where I got all the, I mean, I guess some would probably disagree, but I got all the bad songs out of my system, the kind of, initial learning how to write songs. And so I don't have, when my first album came out, I was ready. So I don't have to look back on 3 albums with embarrassment and things like that, as you see with some artists. So that's really what comes to mind with the first album. It wasn't written to be. All I was doing was writing songs and demoing songs, and I finally had a batch of songs that I was happy with, and it wasn't planned to be released as an album. But then this guy Darren Blevins from a label called Metal Ages Records at the time, he heard those demos and thought, he said, "Man, these are great. We need to put this out. This should be the album as is." So we released it, and those demos became the first album. So that's really when I think back to that, I just think about how I had no idea what I was doing, recording wise and things like that, and I was just demoing songs the best I knew how. I think about sitting in my bedroom with my cheap drum machine and pushing buttons, to kind of program the drums the best way I knew how at that time, and it was also juvenile, but the songs were there and the heart was there, and people responded to it. So um, I'm I still look back on it fondly, and I'm thankful that 10 years ago, or whatever it was now, we were able to put real drums on it and give it like a proper re-release on Ulterium. So the songs finally were kind of able to be heard as I originally envisioned, and I'm glad that's out in the world now.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong too, but that self-titled debut, I mean, wasn't it this year also marks 15 years of Mirror of Souls? And I thought, was Mirror of Souls, or was the debut self-titled, was that more of kind of like a solo project at the time, and like Mirror of Souls was more or less kind of like the band sort of collaboration as well, in a way?
Yeah, I mean, more or less, the first one was definitely solo, and it's not because it was envisioned that way or intended to be. It's just that I didn't know any. I grew up sort of out in the country in Georgia, and didn't know any other people into metal, much less. I mean, my friends and I were, but I didn't know anyone into the kind of metal that I was in who also wanted to be musicians. So I just didn't know any players. So that's why I did those demos myself. And then the funny thing about that was, our first drummer, Sean Benson, who I'm still good friends with, he was a mutual friend of my cousin, and he had lived like 5 minutes up the street from me the whole time, and I just never knew him. So so through my cousin, we kind of got hooked up like pretty much right after the first album came out, and then we started jamming, just the two of us. And then Jonathan, our other guitar player, he was a fan of the first album, and so he reached out to us. He was in Atlanta about getting together and playing, and so he came up, and then the three of us started jamming together, and that was kind of the lineup that made Mirror of Souls.
I've always said that art is life, and it can grow and it can develop and even die sometimes as well. So do you prefer, if like, do you think that the material that you make, do you think it could grow and develop with you as you evolve as an artist, or do you prefer to keep the self-titled in 2003, Mirror of Souls in 2008, Bleeds in 2011, etc.?
Man, that's a good question. That's tough to answer because for me, so much of the my mental perception of all that material is kind of tied to experiences making it, experiences playing those songs live, things going on in the band with different members, or lineup changes or whatever. So those things can kind of color it. So yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question. I think I guess I tend to kind of leave them where they were when they came out, and then the way that they sort of go on and kind of gain new life or new meanings and things like that is just through playing the songs live and seeing the way that people react to them, and people coming up after shows and saying, you know, "Oh, this song, I decided not to commit suicide because of this song, or this song saved my marriage," or whatever. And it's like, whoa, things that I didn't even think about necessarily when I was writing them, but then you kind of see things through kind of a different lens that maybe you weren't aware of before. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's about the best
No,
the best
you.
way I know how to do it.
It's always the most difficult question I ask, and you answered it better than most people. So I give you all the credit in the world and then some for being able to answer it.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
But when it comes to, being in a band with somebody, versus, like what you did with the debut, like when it comes to being in a band, a band is comprised of 4 to 5 individuals, 9 if you're in Slipknot, and like, um, and even when people tell me during the making of an album, oh, we all collectively came together and it was all a mutual, I don't really believe it. If you're in a band with 4 to 5 other people, you're all gonna have disagreements. But you also all have your different experiences and your different ways of expressing it. I'm sure that the way that Ernie expresses himself through the drums is very different from how Taylor expresses himself with the guitar, let alone a guitar and playing with 2 other bands and so on and so forth. So does everybody need to be in the same headspace emotionally when writing music together, or is it better if you're kind of like all in your individual worlds?
Um, I think I think there's a couple answers to that question. I think the individual worlds are fine, and part of that is um, everybody kind of has several different outlets. Taylor has his own band with Paladin. He plays with 20 bands, like you said. Ernie plays with 20 bands in New York where he lives. And so they're always doing stuff musically, and so Theocracy kind of is its own thing. What it is. Really, the honestly, for us, the biggest issue is always scheduling, because everybody has crazy work schedules, tour schedules, everything else. So like, and I live in Athens, the other guys live in Atlanta, Ernie lives in New Jersey. So trying to get everyone in the same space at the same time is difficult enough. So once we can get that part nailed down, the rest of it's usually pretty seamless. I mean, it hasn't always been like that. It depends on who you have in your band, but we have a lineup with all good guys, and I love all those guys now, and so everything is everything feels right, and feels pretty effortless and very very professional at the moment. Everybody's experienced, and everybody brings their strengths to the table, and they're I'm fortunate enough that they trust me with most of the songwriting, and then I bring the stuff to them. They make it better, and either by writing and adding new parts, or arrangements or whatever. So it's kind of it's really a great situation.
Yeah, you should get a member from Australia just to add to the.
Just
Com-
just add it up, do it all over the internet, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, it's gonna happen eventually. So
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's how a lot of them. That's how a lot of it's amazing the stuff you can do now. I mean,
I love it. Like
not all,
I know people like to complain, and some of the points are valid. Whether it would be like, oh, it's all on the internet or whatever. I'm like, so many more people are getting exposed to music. There's so many bands we're all able to discover had it not been for the internet. Like there's so much like great that comes from it. The way that bands can network. I mean, let me ask you, is it easier to find a new member by making a Facebook post on your page or whatever, being like, we're auditioning this, or is it better to go handing out flyers or whatever?
right,
Like,
right,
not every formation of a band could start off with James and Lars finding each other through an ad in the paper. So
exactly. It's a completely different time now. Yep,
yep, and you either go along with it or you get left behind.
right. I agree.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation. And most of all, thank you for another fantastic album. Is there just, with the release of Mosaic, anything in the works that you're allowed to promote at the time in terms of tours, or what else we could be expecting for the near future for Theocracy?
The only thing at the moment is we're playing a festival called Loud and Proud in Germany on October 13th, the day the album comes out, and then beyond that, we have to sit down and sort of decide what makes the most sense next as far as touring and things like that, because it's as I mentioned, it's tough to get everyone's schedules to align. So we're kind of we're looking at the offers that are coming in now and kind of deciding if we want to do another European run or something in the U.S. or what first. So stay tuned. Hopefully news will be coming. But thanks for talking to me, Alex. This has been awesome, and thanks for the great questions and for all the kind words you said about Mosaic. I'm really thrilled that you like it.
I appreciate it, and shout out to the furry guests that walked by as well.
Absolutely.
When
Absolutely.
when a security guard at the concert venue does it, I get pissed. But when a cat does it, it's always welcome. Everybody, we are here with Theocracy. Be sure to check out Mosaic. This is Alex from Heaven, New York, and we will see you next time.